Well, just as predicted, it's happened. A new Nintendo Switch has been announced, and I have found the absolute dumbest take in reaction to it. But before we get to that, a new Nintendo Switch has been announced. Are you horrifically disappointed? Let me know in the down below section there. Are you catastrophically let down? Let me know in the comment section in the down below. Are you going to be a smug prick about how you knew there wasn't going to be a Switch Pro this year? Well, let me know in the down below comments. So, as I just alluded to, and as you no doubt have already become aware, this is not the Nintendo Switch Pro many were predicting, or at least hoping for. It doesn't have an upgraded processor. It doesn't have 4K output. It doesn't have pretty much any of the stuff we really wanted from a Switch Pro. What it does have is a new screen. That's exciting. It's OLED, so that's nice. It is legitimately nice. OLED screens are fantastic. It's bigger, which is what I wanted. That's you know, that was at the top of my list for Switch Pro want list. Bigger screen. Keep the Switch the same size, but get rid of those chunky ass bezels that the existing one have and just stretch the screen out all the way to the edge. And that's what they've done. New 7-inch screen. Nice. It has a new feature on the dock, so that's exciting. It has new speakers for when you're in handheld or in tabletop mode. New speakers. Ooh, I almost forgot the most exciting thing. It has slightly more onboard storage. And literally nothing else. Oh, no, sorry, I tell a lie. It does come in a new color, white. And yes, shut up, color science nerds, because white is not really a color, it's all the colors. And a color, by definition, is some visible light at a specific range of wavelengths, not all of the wavelengths. I know, shut up, you know what people mean, it's called the vernacular. Bam, color science topped by word science. Hello again, I am Blunty. What an intro. I think I deserve a sub and a bell and a thumb for that intro because it was stupid and way too long for an intro, really. Let's dig in. So it has the nicest screen, it has the white color, it has the nicest speakers, it has the bigger screen, it has a new dock with a slight improvement, but none of the 4K stuff and pro stuff and faster clock speeds and better processor that we really wanted from the alleged Switch Pro. Oh, I did forget in the intro, by the way, there is one more feature I didn't mention, and that's a much nicer kickstand. So if you are using it in sort of tabletop or desktop mode or whatever they call it, which will be quite a bit nicer because of the bigger screen, so you won't have to squint so much at the little screen on the table. It also has a much nicer kickstand with a greater range of angles, and it's much more robust, so it's not going to sort of feel as flimsy and wobbly, and probably won't snap off as soon as you breathe near it like the existing kickstand does. But rather more usefully is that new dock feature and Ethernet port. Because since year one of the Switch, I have been using my Switch, my main Switch at least, with a USB to Ethernet adapter, which means I sacrifice one of my USB ports in order to get Ethernet into the Switch, to give it a faster, smoother, more reliable internet connection, which is, you know, nice for the game downloads and updates alone, but of course when you're playing online games, it's way better. So having an Ethernet port built into the dock now is nice. It means Nintendo has recognized that internet connections are important in consoles. At last. Try and name any other Nintendo console that has had a built-in Ethernet port. But news about the new Nintendo Switch broke about 11 PM my time last night. I was already curled up in bed and just sort of drifting off to what my body laughably calls sleep. And it is now 6:22 AM the following day. So between then and now, there's been plenty of time for people in different time zones to do their hot takes and such. So YouTube will inevitably be flooded with videos just like this one today, and many, many articles on your favorite gaming news sites and whatnot. Because not many people know this, but if you make content in and around technology and or video games, you are contractually obligated to make a big deal every time Nintendo releases a bit of hardware, or even a bit of news about a bit of hardware, or anything at all. It's you know, Nintendo, we have to. We're compelled to. Including, predictably enough, the dumbest take possible from, big surprise, Kotaku. Their claim, because negativity gets more clicks than positivity, just look at yesterday's video that I produced, for example. Perfectly innocent little vid, friendly, open, helpful, no controversy at all, and it did extremely poorly. But Kotaku open with, the new Nintendo Switch doesn't need 4K even at all. Why would you bother, dumbass? Or something to that effect. First of all, yes, it does, because higher resolution, smoother looking graphics are always welcome. Have you not noticed the trend in every screen you look at over the last few years? They're all getting higher resolution. And people like that. People want that. People choose that. Don't know if you've noticed or not, Kotaku writer. Have you looked around at the world recently? But that is not actually really the dumb part of this article, because no one with a brain was even predicting that the alleged Nintendo Switch Pro was going to be capable of rendering in 4K. No, instead, anyone with a clue, anyone who with their finger on the pulse, was predicting, or at least hoping, that Nintendo was going to take advantage of Nvidia's DLSS 2.0 or 2.2, I think we're up to at the moment, technology, which does an amazing job of taking internally rendered stuff at 1080p or 1440p or whatever, scaling up to 4K and looking almost visually indistinguishable from natively rendered 4K, at least until you start sort of pixel peeping and freeze framing. And, when you're actually just playing the game, you'd be hard pressed to notice in pretty much any game, outside of a few specific little details you have to go looking for to notice, to be able to pick out which is which. It does brilliantly. It's one of the smartest things Nvidia have ever done. And given the Nintendo Switch runs on Nvidia hardware, we were hoping that it would get an upgrade to be capable of doing that. Or at the very least, have a simpler kind of upscaler built into the dock. So whenever you slammed your Nintendo Switch into the dock, it would do some magic upscaling. Not unlike a little device called the M Classic, which I reviewed just before the launch of Monster Hunter Rise, which does kind of the same thing. It has a special little processor on board, does a special amount of upscaling and smoothing and stuff like that to take the output from the Switch and make it look better on screen. It's not outside the realm of possibility or even practicality to expect some sort of 4K upscaling from the Nintendo Switch to polish up the graphics a bit, even if internally they're rendered at low resolution still. You can still make them look better very, very easily these days. But Nintendo just haven't bothered. But whether or not you're interested in 4K, whether or not you care about 4K or upscaling, whether or not you're happy, perfectly happy with the state of the graphics coming out of the Switch right now, the Switch still does need need more power. Whether or not it's used for 4K or not. But the dumb shit Kotaku writer asks, why would the Switch even need more power? Nintendo don't even make graphically high fidelity games. It's fine. And sure, Nintendo lean into that sort of style, which takes advantage of the low power they've got while still making games look quite remarkably pretty, actually. But here's the thing. Nintendo-made games are not the only games people want to play on the Switches, or even do play on the Switches, or intend to play on the Switches, or want on their Switches. Dipshit. And even issues of ports aside, a lot of third-party, but still Switch-exclusive games have performance issues because of the extremely limited power available. Take, for example, the massive hit Monster Hunter Rise. Glowing reviews, selling like crazy. It is a really, 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 really fun game. I love it. It's one of my favorite games on the Nintendo Switch library for all time ever, at least so far. But it does have limitations caused by the choking point of the Nintendo Switch power. Sure, it runs pretty consistently and pretty remarkably consistently at 30 FPS almost all of the time. Even in the most stressful environments, when the modes where you've got, a dozen different monsters on screen and 4 different hunters and explosions going off everywhere, it keeps up. It does really, really well. But it does this by absolutely tanking the resolution at which it is internally rendered, down to right down to the likes of 540p. Not even 720, 540p, and then choking that out at 1080. And as you might imagine, at 540p upscaled to 1080p, you can notice, because it's not doing a DLSS style upscaling, it's just going stretching it out. Besides that, we are half a decade into the Nintendo Switch's lifespan at the moment, but even from day one, there were performance issues, even with Nintendo's own first-party games. Breath of the Wild, there were several areas on that map, including one right at the start of the game, where you just walk into a patch of grass near a specific tree and the performance would just go. It it would dump down to like 12 frames a second. There was another area where a bunch of physics happened, a bunch of stuff rolled down the hill at you, and performance would tank because of the limited power on the machine. They did later sort of do some patching to help alleviate that, and I believe it's better these days than it was. But it still happens. It's still there. You can still feel the performance drop when you get to that area. It's just less of a performance drop than it used to be. And that's not a bug. That's the processor struggling. Let's bring it up to the most recent example of the limited power holding back a game. I tried to play the demo of the upcoming release Monster Hunter Stories 2. Streamed it, in fact. I couldn't play that for 3 hours without getting a migraine. The frame rate is atrocious. Like, it's so bad that it literally gave me a headache. And I can be a little bit sensitive to low frame rate in games like that where you're moving through 3D environments at relatively high speed. Like Skyrim on the Nintendo Switch did the same thing to me. The limited field of view and the chunky frame rate made me feel almost instantly sick while trying to play it. So I literally can't play Monster Hunter Stories 2 on the Switch because it makes me physically ill to try. And that's a power issue. It can't run the game well enough at the graphics they wanted to do, at the resolution they wanted to do, to be able to do it at a frame rate that doesn't make me go, oh, God, my eyes! A couple of my very favorite games of all time on the Nintendo Switch library, although they're not Switch exclusive. Dragon Quest Builders 1 and 2. You can play those on other platforms as well. And there, they could possibly run at 60 FPS, depending on which platform you're talking about, but on Nintendo Switch, it runs at 30. They look very similar between the different platforms. The draw distance is a bit different, but for that game, it really doesn't matter that much. But you can certainly feel the difference while playing between 30 and 60. 30 is fine for that game. It's not a super high action game or anything, but it certainly feels better at 60. It would be nicer at 60, is nicer at 60. And there are so many other examples of games on Switch that would be just a bit more pleasant if there was just more power there to run them better, or run them at higher resolution, or run them smoother, or be able to run them at 60 instead of 30. Countless examples of why the Nintendo Switch NEED needs more power. But no, this so-called new Nintendo Switch is using the exact same NVIDIA Tegra X1 processor that they have been using for the last 5 years. Not even a clock bump to help smooth things out for games that do use dynamic resolution, for example. Running faster clocks because, efficiency in production has come a long way, or you found a better way to cool it or something. No, none of that. Haven't even bothered. But frankly, this is pretty disappointing, and I'm not used to being this disappointed in Nintendo, really. I mean, they do some dumb shit from time to time, but for a new hardware, I mean, this is basically the Nintendo 3DS XL. No internal changes, just a bigger screen, basically. Although, in the case of the XL, there was a legitimate reason for me to want one and need one, because it was physically bigger. They had to make it bigger to fit in the bigger screens, which, on a thing the scale of a 3DS, was important to someone with hands as big as mine. The XL was much more comfortable to use, so there was, even though there was no performance benefit as far as the games went, the bigger screens and overall bigger device gave me a reason to upgrade. But I can't imagine existing Switch users will be rushing to upgrade to this new version. Who's going to bother outside of people who just can't resist having the new thing? I can't imagine the screen size was holding back people who don't already own a Nintendo Switch from getting one. I really want a Nintendo Switch. I really want to play Monster Hunter Rise. It looks so much fun, but that little screen. Oh, no, I can't do that. I'll just wait until there's a slightly bigger screen. No one's saying that. So no one's waiting for this upgrade. So I'm not expecting this new model to sell like the proverbial hotcakes. It's just not going to. They are launching it in October, so nice and sitting fresh there for the lead up into the holiday season. So there will be, a nice kick to sales as it starts because, well, they always sell more Switches coming up to Christmas anyway. Not to mention that's when a bunch of fancy new games come out. So maybe they'll do a nice game tie-in special edition. I'm a bit of a sucker for a special edition on occasion. And, come to think of it, November is when Pokemon Shining Pearl and Brilliant Diamond... Wait, did I get those names right? Still trying to memorize Shining Pearl, Brilliant Diamond. I'm pretty sure that's it. Pokemon Shining Pearl, Brilliant Diamond are coming out in November. And the new model of Switch launches 2 months before. Is there going to be a special edition of this new Switch with Pokemon decals and stuff on it? Because that would tempt me. I'm a sucker for a Pokemon special edition. My Pokemon X and Y Special Edition 3DS XL is still my favorite version of the small stack of 3DS models that I have in a box somewhere over there. But yeah, this is a disappointing announcement for anyone hoping for a little bit more. Whether or not you care about the 4K stuff, whether or not you care about, anything else that people were predicting the Switch Pro could, might, should have, the bigger screen, nice, but not a reason to buy it. The lack of fancy upscaling, the lack of more power. At the very least, I wish they'd just upgraded the chipset. Because the Tegra X1 was already outdated by the time they launched the first version of the Switch. Like, there was already a newer model of that exact same technology NVIDIA had produced. They used the older one because it was cheaper. And let them sell it at the price they wanted to sell the thing at, which was probably the smarter decision business-wise. But game-wise, I really wish they'd used the more powerful one, or switched to it for this, or had a new version of that commissioned that included the technology to enable DLSS. Any of the above would have been preferential to this half-assed, farted out. No, I'm not even going to call it an upgrade. Side grade. I don't know. Anyway, I don't have to ask you. You're already letting me know what you think in the down below area. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. And thank you as always to the patrons scrolling up above. And sorry if you heard me just thump my microphone boom arm there. This microphone shouldn't have picked that up too bad, but just in case it did, sorry.